The plasma cannon exploded in a shower of sparks, sending Admiral Zethkar tumbling across the command deck of the Eternal Resolve. Through the viewscreen, the massive Devour ships pressed closer, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with an alien hunger that had consumed 12 star systems in as many months. All batteries, fire at will. Zethkar's forearms moved frantically across the controls, his blue-scaled hide glistening with sweat. The Galactic Defense Coalition had thrown everything at the Devourers. 50 species, 10,000 ships, the most advanced weapons in known space. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. Lieutenant Vexna, her insectoid eyes reflecting the red warning lights, turned from her station. Sir, we've lost the Triumphant Stellar Guardian. The Devourers they're eating our shields, converting them into more biomass. Zethkar watched in horror as a Devourer ship latched onto the nearby cruiser Hope's Dawn. Tendrils of living metal burrowed into the hull, and within seconds the Coalition vessel began to transform. Its clean lines twisted into organic curves. Its crew's final screams echoed across the comm channels before cutting to silence. "How many ships do we have left?" Zethkar asked, though he dreaded the answer. 17, sir, out of the original 10,000. The bridge fell silent except for the distant rumble of explosions. In 6 months, the Devourers had shattered the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled. They consumed technology, absorbed crew members, and turned everything into extensions of their hive mind. No negotiation was possible, no surrender accepted, only total consumption. Zethkar's communication officer, a crystalline being named Shard, suddenly straightened. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission." "It's unusual. From the Devourers?" "No, sir. From Earth. The humans." A collective murmur ran through the bridge. Earth was barely a backwater planet in the outer rim. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They were considered primitives by most galactic standards. Bipedal mammals with short lifespans and crude technology. "Put them through," Zethkar ordered, curious despite everything. The viewscreen flickered, revealing a human female with dark hair and intense brown eyes. She wore what appeared to be simple military fatigues, nothing like the advanced combat armor of Coalition forces. Behind her, Zethkar could see other humans working at control panels that looked almost primitive. "Admiral Zethkar," the human said, her voice calm despite the chaos visible on her own bridge. "I'm General Sarah Chen, commanding officer of the Terran Expeditionary Force. General, with all due respect, this is not the time for first contact pleasantries. We are fighting for the survival of all sentient life in the galaxy." A slight smile played at the corner of Chen's mouth. "Admiral, we've been monitoring your battle. We know exactly what you're facing, and we're here to help." Zethkar's translator must have malfunctioned. "Help?" "General, the Devourers have destroyed the combined fleets of 50 advanced civilizations. Your species hasn't even mastered quantum shielding." "That's true," Chen agreed. "We don't have your technology. We don't have your numbers. But we have something else." Her eyes hardened. "We have experience in total war." Before Zethkar could respond, his tactical officer called out, "Admiral, new contacts on the scope.
300 vessels bearing 27 Mark 6.
Configuration unknown." Zethkar turned to the tactical display and froze. The human ships were unlike anything he'd ever seen. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes like Coalition vessels. These were brutal angular things, all armor plating and weapon hardpoints. They looked less like ships and more like weapons designed to fly through space. "General," Zethkar said slowly, "what exactly do you intend to do?" Sarah Chen's smile turned cold. "Something we learned a long time ago, Admiral. When you're fighting monsters," her image flickered as explosions rocked both their ships, "you have to become something worse." The human fleet accelerated toward the Devourers, and Zethkar noticed something that made his blood run cold. The human ships weren't just approaching. They were splitting up, surrounding the Devourer formation in a classic pincer movement. But more disturbing was what his sensors were detecting. "Lieutenant Vexna," he said quietly, "are you reading what I'm reading?" The insectoid officer's compound eyes dimmed. "Yes, sir. The human ships, they're not just armed with conventional weapons. I'm detecting massive quantities of antimatter fusion bombs and—" "Sir, is that a solar collection array?" On the screen, General Chen was giving orders to her fleet. "All units, this is actual. Remember the briefing. We're not here to capture anything. We're not here to study anything. We're here to kill everything that isn't us. Rules of engagement are simple. If it moves and it's not human, burn it. The first human ship reached the Devourer line, and Zethkar watched in fascination as the alien vessel moved to consume it. Just as it had thousands of Coalition ships, biomechanical tendrils reached out to bore into the human craft's hull. They never made contact. The entire human ship detonated in a nova-bright explosion that vaporized 3 Devourer vessels instantly. The blast was so intense that Zethkar had to shield his eyes even through the view screen's filters. What in the name of the ancients was that? Vexena gasped. General Chen's voice came through the comm, calm and matter-of-fact. Self-destruct sequence. We call them suicide ships. When something tries to eat you, you make sure it chokes. More human vessels reached the Devourer line and more explosions followed. But these weren't random sacrifices. Each detonation was precisely calculated, creating gaps in the alien formation that other human ships exploited with ruthless efficiency. The Devourers, for the first time in months, seemed confused. They had evolved to consume and adapt to enemy technology. But how do you adapt to an enemy that destroys its own ships rather than let you take them? Admiral, Chen continued, we need your remaining ships to fall back to coordinates I'm transmitting. We're about to try something that might destroy everything in a 50,000-kilometer radius. What are you planning? Zethkar demanded. We're going to introduce the Devourers to human ingenuity. Chen's expression was grim. Specifically, what happens when you combine a solar collection array with every piece of fissile material we could strip out of a dead star system. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. You're going to detonate a star? Not exactly. We're going to create a miniature one, right in the middle of their formation. The remaining Coalition ships retreated as ordered, and Zethkar watched in a mixture of awe and terror as the human fleet maneuvered with mechanical precision. There was no heroic posturing, no noble speeches about sacrifice. The humans moved like efficient killers, positioning their ships with the cold calculation of apex predators. The largest human vessel, a massive construct that dwarfed even Coalition dreadnoughts, positioned itself at the center of the Devourer swarm. Its hull bristled with collection arrays that began focusing stellar radiation into a concentrated beam. All Coalition vessels, Chen's voice crackled over the comm. You have 30 seconds to reach minimum safe distance. 30 seconds? Zethkar's pilot shouted. That's impossible. Then I suggest you push your engines past their safety limits, Chen replied coldly. Because in 31 seconds this entire sector is going to become uninhabitable for the next 10,000 years. The countdown began, and Zethkar found himself witnessing something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. As the human ships prepared for their ultimate gambit, he finally understood what General Chen had meant about becoming something worse than monsters. The humans weren't just fighting the Devourers. They were prepared to poison space itself to win. 20 seconds, 15, 10. The solar collection array reached critical mass, and the last thing Zethkar saw before his ship's emergency blast shields engaged was the birth of a new star, burning with the fury of human determination. When the light faded and the radiation cleared, the Devourer swarm was gone. Not defeated, not retreating, simply gone, reduced to component atoms in the face of humanity's terrible solution. General Chen's face reappeared on the view screen, her expression unchanged despite having just sacrificed hundreds of ships and thousands of crew members. Admiral, she said simply, we need to talk. 3 days later, Zethkar found himself aboard the human vessel Vindication, a name that seemed increasingly appropriate. The ship's interior was as brutal and functional as its exterior. No decorative elements, no artwork, nothing that didn't serve a direct military purpose. Even the lighting was harsh and efficient. General Chen led him through corridors filled with humans preparing for war. What struck Zethkar most wasn't their advanced equipment. Most of it was actually primitive by Coalition standards. It was their attitude. These soldiers moved with the quiet confidence of professionals who had seen the worst the universe could offer, and were prepared to respond with overwhelming violence. Your species fascinates our xenobiologists, Chen said as they walked. Most civilizations that achieve spaceflight have moved beyond large-scale warfare. Your coalition represents the pinnacle of cooperative achievement, and yet we're losing. Zethkar replied bitterly. Yes, because you fight like civilized beings. Chen stopped at a blast door marked, War Room Authorized Personnel Only. You follow rules of engagement. You try to minimize casualties. You seek solutions that preserve as much life as possible. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber filled with tactical displays showing the entire Devourer invasion. Red markers indicated consumed systems. Yellow showed contested zones. The amount of red was staggering. The problem, Chen continued, is that the Devourers don't share your values. Around the central holographic display, Zethkar saw a dozen humans studying the tactical situation. They ranged in age from barely adult to elderly, representing different ethnicities and backgrounds. What united them was a particular hardness in their eyes, the look of individuals who had seen too much death. Admiral Zethkar, Chen announced, meet the staff of the Terran Expeditionary Force. Colonel Martinez, our tactical coordinator. Dr. Okafor, our xenobiologist specializing in devourer physiology. Captain Lee, our logistics officer. And Professor Volkov, our specialist in extreme solutions. Volkov, an elderly human with silver hair and pale blue eyes, looked up from a tablet displaying equations that made Zethkar's head hurt. Admiral, I've been reviewing your combat data. Fascinating opponents, these devourers. They represent evolution's answer to technological warfare. They're unstoppable, Zethkar said. They adapt to every weapon we use against them. They turn our own technology against us. In 6 months, they've consumed more advanced civilizations than have ever been destroyed in galactic history. Unstoppable? Dr. Okafor, a dark-skinned woman with intelligent eyes, smiled grimly. Admiral, respectfully, you haven't been fighting them correctly. Colonel Martinez activated the central display, showing the recent battle in detail. Your coalition forces engaged the Devourers in traditional fleet actions, formation fighting, coordinated tactics, rules of engagement that prioritize the preservation of life and equipment. The display showed coalition ships attempting to disable Devourer vessels, trying to retreat when outmatched, following protocols designed for warfare between civilized species. The Devourers exploit every one of these tendencies, Martinez continued. They know you won't sacrifice your own ships unnecessarily. They know you'll try to save disabled vessels. They use your own compassion against you. Captain Lee, a compact woman with short black hair, pulled up logistics data. We've been studying human military history, Admiral. Our species has one advantage over every other in the galaxy. We've never stopped fighting wars. While other civilizations achieved peace and prosperity, General Chen added, humans continued to develop new ways to kill each other. We've fought with everything from sharpened sticks to antimatter weapons. We've developed tactics for every conceivable scenario. Professor Volkov looked up from his calculations, including scenarios where complete destruction is preferable to defeat. The room fell silent. Zethkar felt a chill run through his scaled hide. You're talking about genocide. We're talking about survival, Chen corrected. Admiral, what do you know about Earth's history? Very little. Your planet was recently added to our database, mostly agricultural, some light industry, population around 8 billion. Dr. Okafor laughed, but there was no humor in it. Admiral, that's peacetime Earth. What the databases don't tell you is that in the last century alone, humans fought 2 global wars that killed over 100 million people. We've developed weapons capable of sterilizing our entire planet. We've created biological agents that could wipe out all human life. And we've used them, Martinez added grimly, against each other. When humans fight, we don't just seek victory, we seek the complete annihilation of our enemies. The tactical display changed, showing Earth's surface. But instead of the peaceful agricultural world Zethkar expected, he saw massive industrial complexes, orbital shipyards, and what appeared to be strip mining operations across entire continents. When we received word about the Devourer invasion, Chen explained, humanity made a decision. We converted our entire civilization to a war footing in 6 months. Every factory, every resource, every citizen, all dedicated to one purpose, building a fleet capable of killing the Devourers. But your ships, Zethkar protested, they're so primitive compared to coalition technology. Primitive. Professor Volkov smiled coldly. Admiral, let me show you something. The display shifted to show the internal structure of a human warship. Zethkar gasped. Where coalition vessels had elegant engineering and multiple redundant systems, human ships were crammed with weapons, armor, and explosives. Every cubic meter was utilized for maximum destructive potential. We don't build ships, Volkov explained. We build weapons that happen to fly through space. Every human vessel is designed with one primary function: to kill as many enemies as possible before it's destroyed. You see, Admiral, Chen said, the Coalition has been trying to fight a conventional war against an unconventional enemy. The Devourers don't follow the rules of civilized warfare, so neither will we. The display showed new tactical formations, human ships operating in small, aggressive units, each vessel prepared to self-destruct rather than be captured. Unlike Coalition forces that tried to preserve their technology, humans treated their ships as expendable ammunition. Every human ship carries enough explosives to create a significant blast radius, Martinez explained. We've calculated that even if the Devourers adapt to our weapons, they can't adapt to the simple physics of nuclear fusion happening inside their own formations. Dr. Okafor activated another display showing Devourer biology. We've studied the remains from your battle. The Devourers are remarkable. They can adapt to almost any threat within hours. But adaptation requires time and resources. If we hit them with enough different threats simultaneously, we can overwhelm their ability to evolve countermeasures. You're planning to throw your entire fleet at them, Zethkar realized. A suicide attack on a galactic scale. Not suicide, Chen corrected. Sacrifice. There's a difference. Suicide accomplishes nothing. Sacrifice accomplishes objectives. Captain Lee pulled up production figures that made Zethkar's head spin. We're not throwing one fleet at them, Admiral. We're throwing 50 fleets. Every month, Earth's industrial capacity can produce another complete armada. We'll keep building ships faster than the Devourers can destroy them. But the casualties, Zethkar whispered. The loss of life will be staggering. The room fell silent again. Finally, General Chen spoke, her voice quiet but firm. Admiral, let me tell you about something humans call acceptable losses. It's a concept that apparently doesn't exist in coalition warfare. We calculate the cost of victory against the cost of defeat, and we choose victory regardless of the price. Professor Volkov's tablet chimed, and he looked up with satisfaction. Excellent. Admiral, I've just received confirmation. Our deep space monitoring stations have located the Devourer homeworld. The central display showed a star system unlike anything Zethkar had ever seen. The primary star was surrounded by massive biomechanical constructs, Devourer breeding stations that stretched across interplanetary distances. Preliminary estimates suggest this system contains approximately 1 trillion Devourer organisms. Volkov continued cheerfully. Quite impressive, really. They've converted several planets into biomass production facilities. That's impossible to defeat, Zethkar said. Even if we assembled every remaining coalition ship, we couldn't dent those numbers. You're thinking conventionally again, Chen said. Colonel Martinez, show him Operation Cleansing Fire. The display changed to show a human fleet unlike the vessels Zethkar had seen before. These ships were enormous, each one the size of a small moon. Their purpose became clear as Martinez explained the plan. We call them planet killers. Each vessel carries a stellar compression device, technology we developed from studying your solar collection arrays. When detonated near a star, they cause a supernova. The implications hit Zethkar like a physical blow. You're going to destroy their entire star system. We're going to sterilize it, Chen corrected. Complete obliteration. Every Devourer, every breeding station, every scrap of biomechanical infrastructure. When we're finished, that system won't exist. But what about other life forms, planets that might harbor indigenous species? Dr. Okafor consulted her data. Our analysis indicates the Devourers have already consumed any native life. The system is 100% hostile biomass. Still, Zethkar protested, to destroy an entire star system. Admiral, General Chen's voice cut through his objections like a blade. Let me ask you a simple question. If the Devourers aren't stopped, how many star systems will they consume? How many civilizations will cease to exist? The question hung in the air. Zethkar knew the answer. At their current rate of expansion, the Devourers would consume the entire galaxy within 50 years. We're not the heroes of this story, Chen continued. We're not noble warriors fighting for justice. We're exterminators dealing with a pest problem. The only difference is that this pest threatens all sentient life in the galaxy. Professor Volkov looked up from his calculations again. Oh, an admiral? We've prepared contingency plans in case the planet killers fail. We call it the Scorched Galaxy Protocol. I'm almost afraid to ask, Zethkar said. We detonate the galactic core, Volkov said matter-of-factly. Create a black hole large enough to consume everything within 100,000 light-years. It would end all life in this galaxy, but it would also ensure the Devourers never spread to other galaxies. The room fell silent. Even the other humans seemed sobered by the professor's casual mention of galactic genocide. You would destroy everything, Zethkar whispered. Just to stop them? General Chen nodded slowly. Admiral, humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the only way to save something is to be willing to destroy it. We won't let the Devourers win. Not if it means ending all life in the universe to stop them. For the first time since the invasion began, Zethkar felt something he thought he'd lost forever. Hope. It was a terrible hope, bought with the promise of unimaginable destruction. But it was hope nonetheless. The humans were monsters. But they were monsters on his side. What do you need from the coalition? He asked. Chen smiled, and for the first time it wasn't cold. Everything you have left, Admiral. Ship's crews, industrial capacity, intelligence data. We're going to show the Devourers what happens when you threaten something humans are willing to die for. And what's that? Everything else. 2 weeks later, Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, now part of the largest military fleet ever assembled in galactic history. The sight was both inspiring and terrifying. Alongside the remaining coalition vessels, thousands of human ships stretched across space in perfect formations. But these weren't the brutal angular warships he'd first encountered. These were something worse. General Chen's voice crackled over the comm from the human command ship Retribution. All vessels, this is General Chen. We are now entering the outer system of the Devourer homeworld. Remember your briefings. We are not here to capture territory. We are not here to take prisoners. We are here to commit xenocide on a scale never before attempted in galactic history. Through his view screen, Zethkar watched the Devourer system grow larger. What he saw defied comprehension. The star itself was encased in a lattice of biomechanical constructs that stretched billions of kilometers in every direction. Entire planets had been converted into writhing masses of alien flesh, pulsing with an organic light that made his stomach turn. Tactical assessment, he called to Lieutenant Vexna. Sir, our sensors are detecting approximately 1.3 trillion individual Devourer organisms. The system appears to be one massive breeding facility. Her compound eyes reflected the horrific sight. Admiral, I don't think even the humans can... She was interrupted by a transmission from Dr. Okafor aboard the Retribution. All Coalition vessels, you're about to witness something unique in galactic warfare. Humans don't just fight to win. We fight to ensure our enemies can never threaten anyone again. On the tactical display, the human fleet began to separate into dozens of smaller formations. Unlike traditional battle groups, these units moved with a predatory grace that reminded Zethkar of pack hunters surrounding prey. Captain Martinez's voice joined the comm chatter. Attention all units. You are cleared to engage with Protocols 7 through 15. Repeat, full extinction protocols are now in effect. Zethkar had studied the human military manuals during the journey to the Devourer homeworld. Protocol 7 was the systematic destruction of enemy breeding facilities. Protocol 15 was something called population reduction through biological warfare. Admiral, Vexna whispered, they're not just planning to destroy the Devourers. They're planning to make sure they can never evolve or adapt again. The first wave of human ships reached the outer system defenses. Devourer bioships, each one the size of a coalition cruiser, moved to intercept. Zethkar watched in fascination as the aliens attempted their standard consumption tactics. They never got the chance. The human ships didn't engage in traditional combat. Instead, they accelerated directly toward the Devourer vessels and detonated massive fusion bombs at point-blank range. The explosions were so intense that entire sections of space became temporarily uninhabitable due to radiation. Kamikaze tactics, General Chen explained over the comm. We learned them from our own history. When conventional warfare fails, you make your enemy pay such a high price for victory that they lose even when they win. But the suicide ships were just the opening move. As the Devourer forces moved to adapt to the nuclear attacks, the second wave of human vessels arrived carrying weapons that Zethkar had never seen before. Biological warfare, Dr. Okafor announced. We've developed synthetic viruses specifically designed to target devourer biochemistry. They can't adapt to threats they've never encountered. The human ships began releasing clouds of what appeared to be glittering dust into space. When the clouds contacted devourer vessels, the alien bioships began to convulse and die, their organic hulls dissolving at the molecular level. "That's not possible," Vexna gasped. "The devourers can adapt to any biological threat within hours. Not if the threat rewrites their DNA faster than they can evolve," Professor Volkov's cheerful voice replied. "We've created what you might call a biological weapon that forces rapid evolution in random directions. The devourers are literally evolving themselves to death." The third wave arrived carrying something even worse. Ships that looked more like mobile factories than military vessels positioned themselves throughout the system and began deploying what appeared to be construction equipment. "Self-replicating hunter-killers," Captain Lee announced. "We call them von Neumann swarms. They'll consume any devourer biomass they encounter and convert it into more hunter-killers." Zethkar watched in horror as mechanical swarms began consuming entire devourer breeding stations, turning the aliens' own biomass into weapons designed to destroy them. It was like watching evolution itself turned into a weapon of war. But the humans weren't finished. "Phase 4 is now active," General Chen announced. "All coalition vessels maintain safe distance. We're deploying temporal disruptors." "Temporal what?" Zethkar demanded. "We've weaponized time," Professor Volkov explained matter-of-factly. "The disruptors create localized time distortions. Any devourer caught in the field experiences time at a different rate than the rest of the universe. Some experience 1,000,000 years in seconds, aging to death instantly. Others are frozen in temporal loops." The space around the devourer homeworld began to shimmer with impossible geometries as human temporal weapons rewrote the laws of physics. Entire swarms of alien bioships simply ceased to exist, not destroyed but erased from the timeline itself. "This is impossible," Zethkar whispered. "Your species has only had faster-than-light travel for 50 years. How do you have weapons that surpass our understanding?" General Chen's image appeared on his view screen, her expression grim. "Admiral, when humans are threatened with extinction, we don't follow normal technological development. We skip steps. We take risks that would horrify any sane species. We develop weapons so terrible that we'd never use them against each other." The battle, if it could be called that, continued for 6 hours. By the end, Zethkar realized he wasn't witnessing a military engagement. He was watching the systematic extermination of an entire species using weapons that violated every convention of civilized warfare. The devourer homeworld, a massive organic construct that had pulsed with alien life, was now a cold, dead rock drifting through space. The biomechanical lattice around the star had been reduced to its component atoms. The breeding stations that had stretched across the system were gone, consumed by self-replicating machines that had then consumed each other, leaving nothing behind. "Final phase," General Chen announced. "Professor Volkov, you're clear to deploy the Omega Protocol." Zethkar watched as the largest human ship, a vessel he hadn't even noticed during the battle, positioned itself near the system's star. The ship was enormous, larger than anything the Coalition had ever built, and its purpose became clear as it began to unfold like a mechanical flower. "What is that?" Zethkar asked. "Insurance," Volkov replied. "The Omega device will cause this star to go supernova in approximately 6 hours. The explosion will sterilize everything within a 50 light-year radius, ensuring that no trace of devourer genetics can ever resurface." "You're going to destroy 50 star systems?" "We've already evacuated any inhabited worlds," Captain Lee added. "It took 3 months and most of our transport capacity, but we relocated approximately 4 billion sentient beings to safe zones." "You evacuated them?" General Chen's voice carried a note of surprise. "Of course, Admiral. We're not monsters. We don't kill innocent life unless there's no other choice." The distinction was lost on Zethkar, a species that would sterilize 50 star systems to ensure their enemies' complete extinction, but would also spend 3 months evacuating innocent civilians. The humans operated by a moral code he couldn't begin to understand. "All vessels," Chen announced, "begin withdrawal to minimum safe distance. In 6 hours, this system will cease to exist. Mission objectives have been achieved. The devourer species has been rendered extinct." As the combined fleet retreated from the doomed system, Zethkar found himself staring at the tactical displays in stunned silence. In less than a day, the humans had accomplished what the entire Galactic Coalition had failed to do in 6 months. They hadn't just defeated the Devourers. They had erased them from existence so completely that no trace would remain. The weapons they'd used were so advanced, so ruthlessly effective, that Zethkar wondered if humanity posed a greater threat to galactic civilization than the Devourers ever had. "General Chen," he said finally, "I have to ask. What happens now? Your species has weapons that can destroy entire civilizations. You've demonstrated a willingness to commit genocide on a galactic scale. How do we know you won't turn those weapons on us?" The comm channel was silent for a long moment. When Chen finally responded, her voice was thoughtful. "Admiral, that's a fair question. And honestly, we've been asking ourselves the same thing." The view screen showed her rubbing her temples, suddenly looking very tired. "Do you want to know the truth? Fighting like this, becoming the kind of species that can exterminate another sentient race, it changes you." She paused, staring at something off-screen. "We've spent the last 8 months turning ourselves into the most efficient killers in the galaxy. We've developed weapons that violate everything we once believed about the sanctity of life. We've become something our ancestors would have considered evil." Another pause. "But we did it to save everyone else. The question now is whether we can find our way back to being human again." On the tactical display, a new star was being born as the Omega device reached critical mass. For a brief moment, the Devourer homeworld burned brighter than anything in the galaxy. A funeral pyre for a species that had once threatened to consume all life. Then it was over. The Devourers were gone, erased not just from space but from time itself. The galaxy was safe. But as Zethkar watched the human fleet preparing to return to Earth, he wondered if they had simply traded one existential threat for another. The Devourers had been monsters that consumed civilizations. The humans were monsters that could destroy them. The only question was which kind of monster the galaxy needed. 6 months after the Battle of the Devourer homeworld, Admiral Zethkar stood in the council chambers on Nexus Prime, the political heart of what remained of the Galactic Coalition. The vast amphitheater, once filled with representatives from 50 species, now housed barely 24 delegates. The Devourer invasion had devastated galactic civilization, but their extinction had created new problems. "The motion before the council is clear," announced Councillor Thexvol, her crystalline form refracting the chamber's lights. "Should humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Coalition, or should they be classified as a potential threat requiring containment?" Zethkar felt the weight of history pressing down on him. His testimony would likely determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of galactic civilization itself. Around the chamber, delegates whispered among themselves, their faces reflecting the same uncertainty he felt. "Admiral Zethkar," Councillor Thexvol continued, "you have worked most closely with human military forces. Please share your assessment." Zethkar rose slowly, his forearm steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Honored councillors, I have spent 8 months observing human behavior, tactics, and philosophy. What I have learned challenges everything we thought we knew about warfare, morality, and survival." He activated his personal display, showing footage from the final battle. "The humans didn't just defeat the Devourers. They erased them from existence using weapons we couldn't have imagined. Biological warfare that rewrites DNA. Temporal disruptors that remove enemies from the timeline. Self-replicating machines that consume entire star systems." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates shifted nervously. "But," Zethkar continued, "they also evacuated 4 billion innocent civilians from the impact zone, spending 3 months and vast resources to save beings they had never met from species they barely knew." Councillor Vexithera, representing the hive colonies, leaned forward. "Admiral, are you saying humans are simultaneously the most dangerous and most compassionate species in the galaxy?" "I'm saying they're the most human," Zethkar replied. "And I realize how inadequate that sounds. But after months of study, I've concluded that humans operate by moral principles that appear contradictory but are actually consistent." He changed the display to show Earth itself. But this wasn't the industrial war machine he'd seen during the conflict. This was a world beginning to heal. Factories being converted back to civilian use, soldiers returning to farms and schools, the massive military shipyards being retooled for peaceful exploration. The humans have a concept they call necessary evil, Zethkar explained. They are willing to become monsters to protect innocence, but they never forget that they've become monsters. This self-awareness appears to be unique among spacefaring species. Counselor Drexen, whose system had been partially consumed by the Devourers before the human intervention, spoke up. Admiral, our intelligence reports suggest humans have retained their extinction-level weaponry. They could destroy any of our civilizations within days. How do we trust a species with that capability? Before Zethkar could answer, the chamber's main display activated, showing General Sarah Chen. She looked different than during the war, older, more worn but somehow more peaceful. Honored counselors, Chen said, I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but I believe I should address that question directly. Counselor Thi He,